Thank you guys for participating in our polls on Spotify. It looks like you all really loved our episode with Brizzy and want her back on the podcast. We loved her too. We'll have to have her back soon. If you missed her episode, be sure to check out episode number 76 from 2 weeks ago. And also, let us know what guests you want to see in upcoming episodes via the question box on Spotify. Today, we welcome Susan Boggio, a woman who has worked hard to provide help to the suffering, both human and non-human, as she puts it. Susan has an extensive background and has held positions such as the Southwest Regional Board Chair of UNICEF USA and the owner of Happy Face Dog Ranch. We hope you're as inspired by Susan as we are. This is the Balanced Voice Podcast.
Susan Boggio, philanthropist,
yes,
animal advocate, child advocate.
Everything advocate.
Everything advocate. I've had conversations, you've had conversations with Susan on politics.
Many hours.
History, crime, everything. You are so fascinating. And, you know, Jen and I always kind of ponder, like, how do we start? Where do you want to start? And first of all, we're so happy you're here.
Well, I'm happy to be here with two wonderful ladies, two wonderful women who want to protect others, make a difference. That's right. And you do.
Thank you. Thank you. So tell us, okay, nonprofit hat on. We don't do anything without philanthropists and people who, you know, fund the programs. You are a philanthropist. Talk to us about, like, what does that mean and how do you pick a cause and what's speaking to you right now?
Well, I would say that I'm always evolving in what I want to direct my time, talent, and treasure towards. And ever since I was little, my mother was a big influence on me on always trying to be charitable. I remember we lived in North Carolina and we would get these little artifacts from the Cherokee Nation about the kids that were in orphan homes there. And she would always say, we've got to give and help them. And then later when my father passed away and I had a relationship with that, I felt more akin to people emotionally suffering because I was suffering. We didn't have counselors back then for children with parents that lived. I was not quite 8 and it was killed by a drunk driver on Easter Sunday of all things. So, you know, the trajectory of your life is changed sometimes in dramatic ways that you don't anticipate, and that can happen at any time in your life. And I think that early on that helps mold you. And I remember reading something recently from Steve Jobs, of all people, that he was saying that, you know, there are these points along your path, along your life, but you can't look forward to connect the dots until you look behind. You've got to look behind and say, where are these dots leading me? And I thought that was very important because I think a lot of us can relate to dots, points in our life that really impacted us where we could have gone this way or that way, but because of something that happened, we went in a different direction. And I was just always attracted to want to help those that were suffering. And I had a deep love for animals even as a child. And I always had empathy for other children. I can, real briefly, I just remember a terrible thing when I was in elementary school after my father passed, and another child was hit by a bus and killed, a school bus. And I just remember weeping and weeping. And my mother said, what is wrong? And I said, because why did that child die? He was so innocent. And she said, Susan, you take things to heart. Yeah. And, you know, but I did. And I just couldn't help myself. And so I think all my life I've just related to the underdog or the suffering person or an animal. And I just always felt this empathy. And I did, like compassion means to suffer with. I would suffer with if a friend had something or a friend was being bullied. I would feel that. And I think that is where mine comes from. But then as I got older, I intellectually wanted to think about why are these things important, which caused me to study psychology and philosophy and comparative religions to look for answers on why people do what they do. And I started thinking about, as I was in a position to make a financial difference, and I'd always given. I was reading books on tape for the blind when I was in college, and
that's really early to start. I just about these types of things.
Yeah, and it was just very important to me to make a difference. And I met someone in college that was blind, and I remember thinking about him and what could I do? And this was something, he said, well, we have that taping service for the blind. And I thought, oh my God, I love to read. So this is perfect for me. And I continued that on with taping for the blind here in Houston, which is now called Sight to Sound, where I read books for about 12 years.
Wow.
And it was very fulfilling. Some of the books I read, I tried to pick nonfiction and inspiring books that made people think of their life differently. I want to always feel inspired. And I can look at historically great people who have done amazing work through history to change lives. And then I think about people close to me that I see that are making a difference. And that inspires me and lets me know what I need to do with my life. And I think I had to start with the basics. As I started looking at the big picture, a global picture, not just meaning the planet, but globally, what that means is that who is suffering the most? Yeah. Who? And I started looking at, children. And I started thinking about, in this country. And then I started thinking beyond this country. I thought, who really suffers the most are those in the areas of grinding poverty, where they don't have food, they don't have clean water, they don't have access to an education, they aren't protected, they're not safe from predators of every type who want to exploit them and abuse them and harm them. And so I thought about charities, and so I started looking at groups like UNICEF, where I started doing funding in that area with my husband. And when you go visit these places, you are swept away in 360 environment. The smells, the tastes, the sounds, the sights, they engulf you. And you're like, oh my God. When I went to Calcutta, I remember to visit the girls' school we support, and another inspiration, Deepa, who started it. I just thought, my God, how can they ever get out of this?
It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. And I was depressed every day, but I put on my happy face when I would see the girls. And then they would tell me stories, and then I would Susan, keep that smile. Because they're going to see it, and they need to see you being happy for them. And it was hard, but before a child can thrive and achieve great things, they have to survive. You have to survive before you can thrive.
They have to have safety and trust.
You have to have safety, and we're talking about Crime Stoppers here with safety and with human trafficking, which Jennifer deals with, and child trafficking. You can't survive if you're not safe. When you're a victim and people purposely trying to exploit you and take advantage of the fact that you're not educated, that you're not this, you're not that, you don't have the means to fight them in any way, physically, financially, emotionally. And they take advantage of that. So I thought about, this is where I want to spend some resources here.
So were you involved with children first, Susan, or animals first?
It's hard to say. I would say they were pretty contemporaneous. I was always out trying to save a dog or pull over to the side of the road when I was growing up.
Until this day, I don't think I've ever had a phone call with Susan where she's like, hold on, I just rescued this dog. Hold on one second. I just rescued this dog and we're just getting it fed, or we just dropped it off at the vet, or I'm picking him up or her up from the vet, or we just, literally, I don't think I've ever.
No.
It's always
and she won't tell us how many dogs are in her personal care at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I always try to get the number. I'm
it's a vacillating number.
How many different now?
That doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. They all are the same. But, when you think about who's suffering, the same type of people and animals, as you know, are victimized the same.
Yeah.
When there's child abuse, when there's child sexual abuse, when there's trafficking, when there's dog fighting, when all these things are related, spousal abuse, partner abuse.
Oh, yeah.
Just like the dog with the brass knuckles that I talked about at the Crime Stoppers thing. Right after that, then the mother had to call the police from long distance and say, my daughter just got beat up by this guy who already beat up the dog. And now he's beating her up.
You know, we were having an interesting conversation not long ago on another podcast, and it just like clicked. When you're rescuing animals and dogs, like they are a willing participant to want to escape their situation.
Yes.
Like there's no conversation of, oh, I don't want to go with you. Or, I mean, there may be some hesitancy to trust you.
Good point.
But they are willing survivors.
Yes.
That who will listen and follow you as long as you love on them and pet them. I just thought, well, that maybe I should move over into that.
Well, you know, you're exactly right. I mean, there was in this old TV series with Michael Landon, I still remember, called Highway to Heaven. And he had this great quote where these animals were helping people. And he said, isn't it a shame that dog is man's best friend? And that stuck with me. I thought, you know, they will do everything for us. They love us 100%. And humans, not so much. They're not as innocent, but we can catch them in their innocence and we can make a difference. But again, they have to survive first, get the safety. They've got to have food, water, vaccinations against polio, measles, diphtheria, things like this. And they have to be safe. And I've also expanded into my work with refugees, not only through UNICEF, but through interfaith ministries, and my husband through the Catholic charities, Relief Charities, since he's Italian and he's Catholic. The same. And it's like cheese on pizza. So, you know, we care because we think about people fleeing areas where they have no place to go. And they are not always welcome and they're misunderstood, but these ones that come here are vetted by the State Department. So they get only about 6 months worth of State Department furnished, like in a low-income apartment. They're not getting a TV or a phone or anything like that. But within 12 months, the vast majority, over 90%, are self-sufficient.
Oh my goodness!
Wow,
those are lessons we need to take in all communities in this country.
Refugees coming with nothing.
I picked them up from the airport with my friend Tamina, who helps run the refugee services, and as a volunteer. And they have just a little roll-on bag, and we've gotten some from all countries in the world. And obviously there are ongoing crises all the time, and we can't take them all, but the ones we do take, believe me, they are more than appreciative. They're like, wow, thank you. And even though my family got here early in this country, I don't think that we should respect people less because they got here later. My family apparently got here in the 1600s, John Roper on my family side, but my husband's grandparents came here from Italy, and they've obviously been able to make a difference. And, you know, but again, you cannot thrive and make a difference until you survive. So we have to get the basics taken care of. And on your giving pyramid, and I like to use visual examples, where is the most good you can do? Where is the most trouble that you can solve? It's got to be these people, the majority of the world that lives in this. And then you can move your way up from that to education's the very next step, to read and write and all that you can't do if you're not alive or you're severely medically handicapped.
So survival is first.
At the bottom.
Safety and survival is first, is what you contribute to. That's your core.
That's my most core. And then I move on up to education, because I feel like that is the proverbial rising tide that raises all ships, no matter where
it's
you're
like
at.
Maslow's.
Exactly, and I love Maslow, so I love him.
Amazing theory,
Exactly, and so when you think of that, and as you go up the pyramid, then you can add some of the things that make life enjoyable, pleasurable.
Like the arts.
Like the arts, and I think there's nothing wrong with the arts. It's just that if you're going to give, should you give 90% to the arts and 1% to children that are suffering, or maybe the other way? It's your choice, but we're talking here about trying to make better philanthropic choices. And why we choose what we choose, and things that enrich our lives. I mean, to me, it's like dessert. That can enrich my life, but it's not my main course.
Well, and, you know, I'm not like this extremely socially refined human being. And so I do get frustrated when you see the amount of money that's being raised. And I love the arts. I can't tell you I love a good symphony, but I can tell you like a great play. Or, you know, I do think they enhance and enrich our lives. But it's really hard to watch. We have little organizations that are struggling on,
and it's very top heavy.
A couple $100,000, and then you get these other organizations that are just multi-millions of dollars, and you're like, what? We're just trying to help children and animals survive the world.
It seems like art, though, is a safer thing to connect to.
Like safer emotionally?
Yes. Like, oh God, do you want me to talk about children being raped?
It's very hard.
It's very hard. I don't want to go there. Arts are beautiful, and yes, it's fun, and you can all celebrate it.
Yeah.
When I would go to the Global Philanthropy Forum for several years, and there would be people from all over the world that gather from different philanthropic angles, like you just can't even believe. It's amazing. And you know, you'd be sitting at a lunch and go, hello, yes, I'm the vice president of the World Food Bank. Okay. And then you're like, hello, yes, I'm president of the Sierra Club. And then the next person, I have a philanthropic organization called such and such foundation. And so you'd meet amazing people, and they would talk about things, and they would bring in speakers of all types that were interesting, thought leaders, real leaders, not social media leaders that are selling you lipstick or their new little chain. These are real important things they're accomplishing. And I heard stories there that I cannot repeat even here. They were so horrific, like things that were going on in Liberia, in Uganda. They took your breath away. You could hear people visibly, audibly gasp. They were, I can tell you guys privately maybe, but they were so horrific. Yeah. And you go, wow, this is really heavy. So that's why I think the light things of, yes, let's go shopping and let's do this. And all of that's light and fun, and it gets your mind off of this. But there is also a quote by Albert Schweitzer, who's a great humanitarian, as well as a big animal person. He went there to Africa to help people. And he would say, think sometimes of the suffering of which you spare yourself the sight.
Oh, I love
Oh, say that again.
Think sometimes of the suffering of which you spare yourself the sight.
Wow. That needs to go on
that literally
on our podcast.
That is like the greatest quote ever.
Right.
Again, a humanitarian of the deepest level, selfless, self-sacrificing, medically helping people that were dying. And also he cared about the suffering of the animals. And he even wrote the famous prayer for the animals. Because they are innocent. And we mistreat them in his spiritual belief.
And don't have the faculties to help rescue themselves.
They can't. Right? They are dependent on us. And we owe that to people or animals that we feel are lesser. As soon as you put that onus on that you're lesser so you're not worthy, it's the opposite. Because you are not in this position, you are owed more of my time, my valuable time. I have a friend, Susan Fendel, who is writing a book, and I was reviewing the copy of it that she asked me to review, and she talks about being there, showing up. So she not only writes a check, she goes to these places and she sees the children, and she says being there, touching them, interacting with them, and them saying things to her like, you're so simple, you're so everyday. She goes, I want them to think of me as an equal because I am. And she tells them, I was you. Because she was.
Wow.
She was brought up in an orphanage in South Korea. A lot of horrible things happened there. And she's told me, she's written about some of them. And then her UNICEF helped that school that they had. And a sponsor she had with World Vision was in Michigan. And she begged her at 12 years old, can you please adopt me? I don't want to live here anymore. And she did.
Wow.
And then she lived an amazing, interesting life with stuff and meeting interesting people with arts and architecture and things she was interested in New York.
Yeah.
And then she met someone who became her friend, Stefan Fendel, and he's one of the heirs to the Jägermeister fortune in Germany.
My gosh.
I want to be the heir to the Jägermeister.
Yes, but he was one. He was not the major one. He got a small amount compared to the others.
A big amount, I'm sure.
Because he devoted his life to philanthropy, and the others were more business oriented, even though he has a law degree.
Yeah. Susan, one of the things that kind of hits you over the head when you meet Susan Boggio is you're so unbelievably well read. You are so unbelievably well-read, and probably one of the most fascinating women I've met doing the work.
Well, you should meet some other women. But thank you. Thank you for that.
No, and and where does she get the time? That's what
I know.
Where do you get the time?
Well, there are 24 hours in a day.
But so my question is, when you're in this circle and you're the work you're doing with children is
phenomenal.
Nobody can even question this. Like, without question, you can't question it. But I wonder, when you're in these circles and you sit and rub elbows with people who give millions to arts and millions to, do people ever say, Susan, why are you doing this for the animals?
Yes.
Like, why?
Yes, they do.
So
they ask you?
Yes.
I would think, but I would think that they
I've
do.
had that happen, and they
like,
are
shift
not
your money
understanding.
Else or do something different.
Well, when someone says that to me, number one, usually the person saying that to me is not someone who does as much for the humans as they're telling me I need to do more for. They're generally not. And I would like
That's what we call a hypocrite in my
Yeah, a little bit. And they're like, okay, well, let's compare and let's just see. But, I try to be nice. And then, try to do the Jennifer thing, try to be nice. And then
Wait, is that the Jennifer thing?
Yeah, well, she's trying to be nice to something.
She's actually being a little facetious.
I want to know what that really means.
And so then I'm like, well, the thing is, I could give my money to some other things, but I don't feel like that takes away from my compassion for children, or for refugees, or for
because you do
those with a health issue.
Yeah,
it doesn't take away.
No,
we have an abundant heart that I feel like is infinite. I do feel that, and I feel a spiritual connection.
And Dan is so supportive. Y'all support each other in this.
Dan is amazing.
Y'all do it equally.
He very much is.
Yeah,
and he. What's so wonderful is that when you have friends or family that does understand you, does get you, they understand this is just an extension of my circle of compassion. I've extended my circle of compassion. And that's what I feel is important. Don't just look at people who are like me, because I feel that you cannot be successful in life, what real success means, unless you have people with you. They do not have to be your culture, your religion, your background, your gender, your politics.
That's like,
we have to make choices. And what's more important than any of that is our basic humanity.
Which, could the entire world stop and listen to that?
Right?
Literally?
Right. I just want to punch people sometimes.
I know, which is so nice, Jen. But maybe we could take Susan's approach. I mean,
eat a goya cookie to make me sweeter. But sometimes I do shut my mouth.
Of course, yes.
I really try hard to shut my mouth.
Yes, you're perfect. You are.
But it's really hard. What do you tell yourself in your head? Because there are many things I tell myself in my head. When you have family or friends that contribute nothing to the good of society, to helping those that are so vulnerable, that are so abused, that are so exploited. I mean, there are choice words that are going on in my head. Y'all
the little
know what
bubble
they are.
above your head.
You're saying they contribute nothing, but then they criticize those who
contribute?
No,
they don't criticize. No, I wouldn't
or
say
you're
they
just
criticize.
Saying
There's just no
why
positive.
Won't they get up and...
Yeah, get up off your ass and help, make the world a better place. That's what I say in my head. And I have, or honestly, I will tell you that I don't call myself a philanthropist because I'm not
it sounds like a fancy word, doesn't it?
A very fancy word to me.
And say a giving person.
Charitable. I think we're charitable.
Giving
Philanthropy is
it sounds
millions of dollars, kind of what Dan is doing, do lots of money. But I consider myself charitable. But there are times where I always was a volunteer, used my talent,
so valuable,
all throughout the years, but I never really understood the treasures piece. Right? How do you get? I wish I would have given earlier as a kid, even if it was a little bit amount of money. I made a good amount of money at an early stage in my life. So why wasn't I giving? But part of me, some people aren't giving talents. They're not giving treasures. They're not giving
time.
Not even time. The thing that doesn't cost you anything.
Or they'll give lip service.
Or lip service. What's the bubble that goes above your head?
We
bleep here, so you can use those words.
Seriously, I feel bad for them. one of the things that's always helped me with jealousy.
You pity them or you feel bad for them?
I feel bad for them because it's like the opposite of jealousy. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person. There was a philosopher, these two philosophers in a field that Goethe spoke about. I mean, the two philosophers watching a woman toiling in the field. And they said, one said to the other, look at her. She's toiling in the field. She just doesn't think about the world, why we do what we do. She's not worrying about anything. She's just doing her task. And she's not caring about why do we do what we do. How can we have a better life? She's just doing it. She's just going ahead. And the other philosopher, which would be me, putting myself in that position, said, yeah, but that's not a happiness I want. I don't want blissful ignorance.
Or just existence.
Existence, even if it's painful. I try to push myself in things that are painful, and I know where my limits are. But I've learned so much by pushing myself, by thinking sometimes of the things of which I spared myself to see.
Myself to see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I saw these things in my mind's eye or in actuality when I would go to some of these places, even here in Houston. And I think about, what do I want to be? What do I want to do with my life? And as I'm a few months older than you girls, there's 12 months. Yeah. Well, there's 12 months in a year. So that's an accurate statement. I can tell you that I start thinking more and more about things in my life and where I'm pointed to go. And, if I may have shared with you all, I had a close call that I could have been beyond anything I really had imagined for my life and how it was going to end. And thank God, literally, it's not going to end that way. But I think about so many signs that I get from people that I meet and why they're in my life and what they can gift to me by being in my life.
It's a blessing.
It is a blessing.
Thank you to our sponsor, FlipLock, for making this episode possible. FlipLock is a door lock unlike any other lock that was created as a nationwide, straightforward solution to protect your people, whether that be in universities, dorms, daycares, hospitals, or even government buildings. It can be added to nearly any door to keep you and yours safe. We are proud to have such a strong and like-minded sponsor of the Balanced Voice podcast. Check out FlipLock at fliplock.com. That's FLIPLOK.com.
What do you look for, Susan, when you and Dan decide and vet nonprofits that you're going to contribute to? What do you look for? Tell me the things that say, you know what, we've worked hard for our money. You and Dan worked very hard for your money.
Yes,
Dan is not retired. He's still very active.
He hasn't retired yet. He threatens, but
But we have 50 million more dogs to not allowed to quit yet.
Yes, exactly.
What do y'all look at? What are the characteristics you look at in these nonprofits to say, this is where Dan and I are safe spending our money? We know it's going to contribute positively to the world.
Well, we've evolved in that too. I think like a lot of people, the first thing you look at, now we're starting to go to course correct here a little bit, but at first you're like, where are the dollars spent? These are what everybody should look at, but there's another way to look at things. And I'll give an example of that, and you may be aware of it, of this person that's, kind of definitely made me say, yeah, I thought that too. But first you look at where's the majority of the money being spent, how's it being spent wisely, these kind of things. And then I've had a little awakening, like, sometimes there's a thing called, and it's still universal, it takes money to make money. And sometimes you have to spend, like there are people who don't want to spend on a gala because so much is spent on the gala. But how much would they have raised had they not had the gala?
Right.
Yeah.
How much would they have raised had they had the lowest paying CEO, for instance, that says, okay, I'll do it for this much, the low bidder.
Yeah.
If you had a bridge, would you want someone to say, I'm the lowest bidder, I will do it for you the cheapest? Would that be the best? Or would you look for the best and then just get the best you can get from that best? That's where you would go. And I think that's what we need to look at in all of our philanthropy. And there was even a person that has, Dan Pallotta or something like that has had on YouTube, and it's controversial because he said, I used to raise millions for charities, but it would cost them like 30%. And they go, oh, we can't have that. So he goes, now they've gotten their 10%, and now they're not making millions anymore.
It doesn't make any sense.
And so if you're trying to help the charity, sometimes it takes money. You have to have the publicity. You have to hit the advertising. You have to spend on getting these
So the ones that are doing the shiny objects, you're not afraid of those. You dig deep, just a
little bit deeper. Now, if the person that's heading it, of course, is trying to put the shininess on themselves as opposed to the cause, of course, I'm going to object to that. Because it should be about the cause. And whoever leads that cause should say, look, I'm the finger pointing to the moon. I'm not the moon. So please look at the moon. Yes, I'm glad you are seeing my finger, but it's pointing this way, not at the finger.
Do you and Dan have different gut instincts about things?
Sometimes, but because of me, maybe, he's become...
And your very strong personality.
Yes, a little bit. He has definitely shifted to my point of view on a lot of things. And he is definitely more open to giving large as opposed to just giving here and there to make the most impact. And...
her phone's going to go off the hook.
I know.
Okay, I've got enough already. I've got enough already. I'm not Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos combined. Even if I were Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates combined, which we're nowhere close to that. And I had a lot of these other super mega wealthy people. You could not solve all the world's problems.
No, not
you
money.
couldn't.
No.
Number one, there's a lot of reasons you couldn't because people are not in agreement. Again, until we work together on these basic things, as long as you have people wanting to blow other people out of the water or wanting to say you're no good because your religion sucks. I mean, that's just back to, medieval times. We need to have progressed to that. But you have to have the will to do it, and you have to do it smart. You have to have the head and the heart working together, and that's difficult. But again, if you start increasing education with people and opportunities, then they're going to be generally more of a like mind than others.
You're doing a fundraiser right now because you have a farm ranch for pets. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I started this, what happened is I saw that there was not enough foster homes for all the dogs. People say, save it, it's on the street. Well, people couldn't take them off the street because where were they going to put them?
Right.
And so after I reached that, 10 million or 9 million limit at my home, I said, I need to maybe...
10 million dogs.
10 million dogs. Yeah, but they're little. They're little. They don't take up much room.
Like 100.
And, I started thinking about... what else could we do? So we thought about getting a physical property that could hold animals and foster them while they're being vetted, while we're looking for adopters, and getting them whole emotionally sometimes as well as physically. And it's challenging. Because there's the pushback. Why not do to this? Why not get this instead of that? And it's not either or for me. It's both.
Yes.
I don't say, well, I can either brush my teeth or wash my hair. I can do both.
Yes.
It's amazing. And it doesn't take away.
Yeah.
And so I would say the same for that. I mean, if you care about being compassionate, then you need to focus on that. But the Happy Faces Pet Ranch, because I wanted people to think of them being happy, not sadness, because they come in there sad a lot, but we want to leave with them happy, and they do. And what is so amazing is people don't even realize this as the biggest component. It makes people's lives better. It literally helps people thrive. I mean, whether it's
those babies give back to you. Those animals
whether
give
it's
back.
A combat veteran or in a senior home or in a hospital with therapy dogs, whether it's a bomb-sniffing dog, it's a service dog for someone in a wheelchair or for a blind or hearing impaired person.
Dogs finding pornographic material.
They grab on. They're not letting go unless they hear the command. You're like, yay, go get them. So there are a lot of wonderful things that they provide for us. But the letters and things and the texts I get out of the blue from people that say, Susan, I want you to see this dog has changed my life. This dog has made our life better. This filled the hole in our heart after our son died. I mean, makes you tear up.
Yes.
And you're like, I've got to take a minute here before I even respond to that text. And they'll say, look at this. And then to know that you took this dog from hell to heaven.
That's what I love about you, though. You're philanthropic, of course, which is amazing, but you're also boots on the ground. You go to India, you go to different parts of the country. You're looking at children and the environment that they're being raised in. You're investing in solutions, but also participating with animals. I mean, we've said it. We're not joking. Every single time we're on the phone with you, there is something that you're doing to protect, save.
And there's definitely a dog in the background.
Yeah.
Oh, always.
100% of the time. And you've gotten yourself in scary situations because of it. Dangerous situations.
Yes.
And you may not want to talk about that, but what I am interested in kind of going back to this polarizing world, and we can say between the giving community, people are saying give to the arts, don't give to kids or animals or whatever they might say. But how do you talk about keeping your joy. You don't want to lose your joy. You're okay with looking at the hard things in the world. But we've also spun off track a little bit. And you've seen sort of what we've gone through. You've been pulled into some of it too. People say, you shouldn't do this. You should do this. Don't you stand for that? Don't you stand for this? How do you help everybody just unravel, calm down, and get back to service? And is it even possible to do that?
I don't know that it's possible, but I do know that we have to try. If we don't have hope, what do we have? I mean, when I would talk to some of the children and some of the kids, like in the refugee camp in Zatari, the largest Syrian refugee camp in the world, I was heartened because some of the children told me that if it wasn't for the camp, they had no hope. And their parents would tell me, we had no hope. We thought we were going to die out here. And people we don't even know cared about us. And you're here. And you're giving us food and water. And you're getting us out of the tents and into these cargo containers, which they had other people volunteer to paint. And you're making us safe. And it's not perfect. And there's crime there. And there's abuse there. But it's better than it was.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't make it perfect. Most of the time you can't. But you can make it better. And isn't that what we should be doing as human beings? Aren't we called on to make at least our part of the world better?
Yeah.
Or why even have a life? What is that purpose? Everyone should have multiple purposes in their life. I don't feel that it's just one thing. I've never felt that it was just one thing. Because I see a new thing and I'm like, that's something I need to maybe look into. And because of that, I've been evolving. It's...
And you're beautiful, by the way.
You're too kind.
You are. And, I was on the phone this morning with a survivor I'm trying to get. She went through to detox, and now we're trying to get to her, to recovery and restorative services. And you know what she said? She said, you know what, Jen? I love you because you're helping me. I'm just trying to focus on surviving today and feeling safe. And you're preparing my next step for me. And I responded back to her. I said, look, I can tell you, I can provide the next step or plan the next step for you, but you have to walk through the door.
Yeah.
And that's 100%. The hardest part. It's easy for me to coordinate whatever, but you walking through the door. And I think that's what you do, Susan. You prepare that next step for not only God's children, but God's animals and God's humans, just humankind. And you're always looking at what that next step is for people. And I just think that's why you're one of my most favorite people in the whole wide world.
Well, you're very kind. Speaking of which, Jennifer, what you do, when I met Jennifer, I didn't know who the hell this firecracker was.
Firecracker is the best word.
She's like a firecracker.
Yes.
And I thought, this woman has got some kind of internal combustion engine that's just driving her to do these amazing things. And in this little body, she has this big spirit that explodes. And I need to know this person. This is a new person to inspire me.
No, I feel the same about you and you. So we're just gonna have a love fest.
Yes, we do.
On Val's Voice podcast.
And
you can hug. It's all right.
And I want to say also about Rania. Rania's very understated, and she has the biggest heart and a brain and intellect. I mean, your resume is
little head, big brain.
Her resume is incredible with her education level. And I see, and don't look at me, I see in her eyes the windows of this woman's soul.
Yes.
This woman truly cares about those victims. I can see it in your eyes. I'm sure you got that from your mom and your dad. You have real compassion, and that's what it's called for in a position that you have, because you're dealing with some really hard, bad stuff here that happens to people. And lives not only are lost, but the lives left behind that are devastated. And for you to be able to comfort them, and again, using that word hope, that not only can they survive and thrive even through what they've been through, but that you're trying to prevent through like all these programs you've come up with yourself, that you're that you have come up with these things to be proactive, to prevent the suffering. We're on the back end trying to catch the people as they're falling off the cliff, and you're trying to say also, which is what Jennifer and I would also like to do, keep them from falling off the cliff in the first place. If you can do that, you are ahead of the game, because it is really hard to catch all of these.
It is. And I'll tell you, it's not me. It's we have the best team. I believe hiring the best people, and truly, I mean, it's a very common statement, getting out of their way. But I will say it gets frustrating. You can have a mission, you can have pureness of heart, you can renew yourself every day, for me, with prayer. You can do all those things, but then you got to deal with the politics and the people who want to trip you up and stop you and close the doors when you're like, I thought we were opening these doors.
Or the imposters, or the ones that just pontificate rather than truly have depth.
But pontificate with swords.
Yeah,
and
with
like,
swords
you know,
and
it's if you just say whatever and
stabs in the back.
So Nicole, our deputy director, made I have 3 kids. I was literally going to call it a sippy cup. It's not a sippy cup. It's like a tumbler. I don't know what they're called, but you like, they keep drinks cold, and she like customized one for every single person. And mine last year was, you know, a bullseye with like a sword right in my back for last year. But I'll tell you, that's what gets. If you feel like you're running and you're energized and the mission's pure and perfect and you're going to keep going.
You're still getting people pulling on you.
It gets tiring. It gets tiring because it's like pull you back, trip you, pull you back, trip you.
Well, and you know that at the very core level, and those same people worry about their own safety.
But most of them don't have to worry about their safety.
Right,
that's
because
the
they're
annoying thing.
By their security
that's
teams,
or whatever for whatever reason. It's just not. It's not a big thing for them. But. And I'm not talking about leadership. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just saying in general. You deal with it too. You deal with politics. You deal with people who have different opinions that think you should be doing things the way they, or you have people that say, support me, support me, support me.
And they won't support you.
And they won't support you, or they walk all over your support.
Right.
I mean,
and they're like, can you do more? And you're, you know, the thing is, there was this Chinese proverb about the crabs in the pot, and I don't know if you've heard it, but it's so applicable to so many things. But and they're really not doing this; it's just an appearance. But when their crabs are trying to get out of the pot to learn more and do more, the other crabs pull them back in, and they're like, "Come down here with us. Don't go up there and see the light." Kind of like Plato's allegory of the cave, right? Yeah, that's a big allegory. It's applicable to so many things. We could talk about that just in a podcast. But, there are people that don't want certain people to succeed because maybe you'll outshine them. Or there are people who don't want you to succeed because they're going to think you'll be different. You need to be just like us. You can't be different.
Do it their way.
And do it their way. But the thing is, all of us, like you were talking about walking the path, we can only show people what we've learned. And then even as the Buddha said, don't take everything I say as perfect. It may be. But the only way you're going to know if it's good is to test it again with your head and with your heart. And the more important it is, the more time you spend on that. If it's whether to wear this pants or that pants, that may not be a life and death decision you need to contemplate. But if it's like, should I be a lawyer or should I be a minister or something, you have to figure out which is the best life path. And we don't always make the right decision. I don't know about you guys, but I've made some bad decisions. And I've trusted people I shouldn't. And I've also committed the sins of omission, things I should have done.
Or you ignore.
Or I ignored or didn't pay attention to it, not realizing how important it really was. And I think about those things. But I do know that when you're doing good, the spotlight is kind of sometimes on you, even if you're not looking for it. But the people who aren't looking for the spotlight, those are the people that I consider the good and the great. They're a combination. They're doing great things, but they're also good. There are people who've done great things. Napoleon, but he's not good, but he was great. Alexander the Great was killing a lot of people. But good and great, the combination I have met in this lifetime, let alone who I've read about, are truly humble. And you know why? Just like Socrates said, I am wise because I know I'm not that wise.
I know what I don't know.
Exactly. I know that I don't know everything, which sets him apart from the people, I know, pontificating that I know all these answers. That's always the ones I'm the most skeptical of, whether in religion or politics or whatever. I'm like, give yourself some wiggle room there, because last time I checked, I don't think that you are all that. I know you think so, and that's fine.
Great on confidence. Good, good for you that you're confident. However.
There's the big however, right?
Yes.
And so I think there's always going to be people who don't want you to succeed for whatever reason, or they're jealous, or you're different than them, so therefore you're just wrong, or they perceive you're different, and maybe you're really not as different. I've sat down with people who I just didn't think I had a thing in common with, and then I would sit with them like at a lunch thing, and then find out something like this family had this or their family had that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling like a little connection here with this person.
You allow yourself
to open yourself.
And you've got to, if you don't allow yourself to be open, I mean, have your guard up. What did Reagan say? Trust but verify, right? Have your guard up, but do let some people in. You will be rewarded, and you will find that you will learn so much from them, because we're all students and we're all teachers too. I mean, we have that dual role, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we got to wrap up with Susan, but I have two silly questions. They're not silly.
Okay.
First of all, we've mentioned Dan a lot. Tell us very quickly about your wonderful husband, Dan, because we've talked about him.
Thank you.
For me, he's like the rock star, keeping schools safe through genius architectural design, but he does a lot more than what's in my wheelhouse.
The thing is about Dan, he doesn't really talk about, to me, all the good things that he does, and I'll find out later. Just, quiet things that he does, like I'll say, we need that person, blah, blah, because I help them out. And I said, what do you mean you help them out? Because I helped them out. I helped them out. And I know what that means. And then also, it's just like after the school shootings, and this is not a promotion for him at all. He is going to be retiring. Wow. But regardless, he was so concerned about it. And he says, even though I can only do so much in my school design, I can do all of these things, but we need to pull more people in. And he decided to go and get all the experts in school safety and police captains of schools and things like that, and have a whole institute for this. And he offered free, it's free, advice to all these schools.
He's amazing.
He says, I'm not going to, and he said to me, and I hope this is not saying anything, he said to me, I don't want to make any money off the blood of children. I mean, this is 100%.
So you got to tell the audience what Dan does. Dan founded, right, and CEO of one of the most amazing architecture firms here in the city of Houston. But he does projects all over the country. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, he does. And schools and public work are his specialty.
Yeah, his work in the schools is phenomenal. Amazing.
And he doesn't get into the politics because, of course, it's very political. And he goes, I just really tell people I don't like to get pulled into the politics of it.
Yeah.
I try to do what's right, and I have to think about the kids. And sometimes because he does beautiful schools, sometimes I go, oh my gosh, it's too beautiful. Why do we need a place that beautiful? He said, I'm doing it for the same fee as anybody else.
Yeah.
We just
Yes.
The fees are kind of set. And so he just wants to do a good job. And if they're innovative, sometimes people are like, oh, we don't need that. But like you said, it's the people in the school district that make those decisions. He's just the person that does the work. So, it's important to have better designed schools for a host of reasons, not just safety, but just for academic excellence. Yeah. They've already shown that better schools, if you come from a crummy school, your appearance-wise, it's not likely to do as well. And the efficiency of where things are located within a building, there are all these things. And then the structure of the building. Nothing is perfect. No person is perfect. He's just trying to do the best he can, and he's learning a lot and has learned a lot, and he's always reading about the newest things. And I just admire that he's quietly philanthropic on so many levels. I can't even tell you. I mean, I just find out about things. And he's just a giving, caring person. And I attribute that to him connecting with who he really is as a person.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, my very last question is just silly. But Susan, like 4 or 5 years ago, pre-COVID, walked into my house with balloons. And it wasn't like a regular balloon. It was... I don't know what it was. She goes, these are from Pantaleoni. And I was like, what? And she's like, yes, I just got them for her and I want to give them to you. You've met a lot of fascinating people. Who would you say is the most fascinating person you've met?
Well, I've met several really fascinating people. I would say from an animal perspective, Jane Goodall. Mm. She helps the humans, the animals, and the environment.
Yes.
I did a fundraiser for her in my home in 2005, Dr. Goodall. She is completely down to earth. She is elevated. And you talk about Maslow's self-actualization. She's had a peak experience. Yeah, totally. She says, I see the spiritual connection in all of creation. And I felt it and I see it. And she's humble.
Yeah.
She sees it. She felt it. She talks about it. She is totally self-actualized. She gets why she's here. She doesn't care about stuff at all. And then on the human field, I would say one of the most amazing people, if you don't know about her, please read about her, Molly Melching. She founded Tostan, Tostan. What she has done is truly helped people survive and thrive. And girls, this is going to be hard to hear, and I know you know about this. She has literally stopped hundreds of thousands of girls in parts of Africa, beginning in Senegal, by preventing FGM, FGC. Read about it.
Yes.
It might be hard to talk about on this podcast. She did it by saying, she went to the Peace Corps. And she heard about this stuff going on, like in the 70s.
It's just it's mutilation.
It's permanent. Yes. It's permanent mutilation to young girls.
It's horrific.
And even women. Yeah. And it's permanent and painful. And it is deadly, often deadly, the hemorrhaging.
Horrible.
And causes emotional and other grief. And you're bullied and ostracized if you don't have it. And it's cultural. It's not religious. No. As some people have falsely claimed.
And she went to the Peace Corps and did what, Susan?
And she was just there in the Peace Corps and she learned about the FGM. So she decided to stay behind and she started working with the community leaders, again, in kind. She's like, I look different from you. I know I'm from America. I don't want to go and interfere. But she tried to find some members in the community that would listen. And then she found more. And they did that thing. They were able to flip a switch where there were people that said, I don't need to do this. I don't need to do this to my daughter. As a matter of fact, I don't want to do this to my daughter.
Yes.
Is there a way without being ostracized that I can prevent this? She has helped prevent early marriage. She's helped them to get education.
Amazing.
She has helped women have leadership in the community, literally hundreds of thousands. That is creating a ripple effect of millions.
Wow.
Millions.
Wow. No,
one person.
Yeah.
Well, Susan, you're creating a ripple effect. Yeah. You're creating a ripple effect.
Hopefully today.
Yes. Susan, you're amazing. Thank you. We are so thrilled to have you on the Balanced Voice podcast. Your work is incredible. What you're doing in Houston's incredible. What you do with Crime Stoppers, Houston 20, all of us. The world. Animals, everything. We thank you. Thank you. And
well, I thank both of you for doing what you do. You deserve a lot of credit because you're women leaders who are showing that you can be thought leaders and doers, and you're active and you're physically doing it. You're not just showing up at a luncheon and paying for a luncheon ticket and just thinking you've done your part. You're like all in. And I feel a sisterhood in that. We're all in.
We're all in.
We're all in.
Call Susan Boggio. You will hear a dog in the background. Anyway, thank you. We'll catch you guys next time on the Balanced Voice podcast. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's Balanced Conversation. You can find real solutions and tangible resources in our show notes at thebalancedvoicepodcast.com. To join the conversation, follow us on Instagram at The Balanced Voice Podcast and on Twitter at @BalancedVoice_. Stay up to date on Rania's work by following her at The Rania Report, and we can't wait to see you next week for another Balanced Conversation.